revealed. How a shocking slap from my daughter-in-law transformed our family dynamics forever. Steve woke before dawn, the familiar clank of tools awakening the sleepy shadows in his garage. Grease smeared across his hands felt like a badge of honor. For him, hard work was not just a necessity but a deeply ingrained value. One he wielded proudly as he held the title of husband and father, the unwavering backbone of his family. Yet amidst the clattering tools and the rhythmic hum of the engine, a gnawing ache settled in his chest, leaving a bitter taste at the back of his throat. He loved Linda and their 2 children, but there was a stirring longing for recognition, for acknowledgement of the endless hours spent under the flickering fluorescent lights, laboring for their future. It was Sunday dinner, the aroma of roast chicken weaving a cozy blanket over the dinner table spread. Laughter and chatter bounced around the room like a melody, but it felt dissonant. Rachel, their daughter-in-law, had been unusually quiet, choosing to push her food around her plate rather than dive in like the rest of the family. The tension in her shoulders was palpable, and Steve sensed something bubbling just below the surface, a storm brewing within her. "Dad," she finally burst, her voice cutting through the air, firm yet laced with pain. "You don't have a clue what it's like to struggle, do you? You work, you come home, what do you know about real sacrifice?" The laughter that had filled the room became a whispered ghost. Steve's mouth fell agape, the silence stretching into eternity as he processed her words. He felt the sting of betrayal, a flicker of hurt beneath the confusion. "Rachel, I've worked hard for this family, for all of us," he replied, each word coated with disbelief. But before he could finish, her hand came across his cheek, a slap that echoed like thunder in the suddenly still room. His heart raced, breath escaping in a rush as the weight of the situation crashed down upon him. The laughter disappeared entirely, leaving only shock and a tidal wave of unprocessed emotions in its wake. The dinner, which was meant to be a gathering of love, transformed into an emotional battlefield. He could see Rachel's frustration, her dreams hampered by expectations. The kingdom he thought he had built for them looked like nothing more than ruins in the wake of her anger. After everyone left, the remnants of the meal sat untouched, and Steve's mind sped in circles. Had he really been so blind? In his quest to provide, had he truly overlooked the struggles clutching at Rachel's heart? The din of silence blanketed him, each echo amplifying the distance between them. He decided to seek counsel from Mr. Johnson, the wise elder at the edge of town. Steve needed answers, a way to understand the wound that had opened so violently at their dinner table. Yet, deep down, tension festered. He feared the cracks were too deep, that the unraveling of family ties had begun. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue conversations with Mr. Johnson. Opened Steve's eyes to the layers of misunderstanding coiled within his family's dynamics. Each discussion revealed more to grapple with, more to confront. The ominous weight grew heavier as he faced the truth. The fear of never being enough loomed larger than any mechanic's tool. How could he mend the fractures when he himself felt so splintered? As those questions lay unanswered in his heart, the future remained a precarious cliff, and each step toward resolution seemed to teeter on a thread of anxiety. Would his family ever find their way back? Steve sat in the dimly lit corner of the local diner, an untouched cup of coffee growing cold in front of him. The walls echoed with the clattering of dishes and murmur of other patrons, yet he felt separate from it all, his mind elsewhere. He replayed the events of the previous week. Rachel's words and the slap hung in the air like a heavy fog. As he glanced out the window, watching as autumn leaves danced in the wind, he couldn't help but feel he was at a crossroads, both as a man and a father. Mr. Johnson's insights echoed in his mind. Understanding doesn't come from speaking, but from listening. Those words prompted an uncomfortable truth. He had spent so much time providing financially that he neglected to provide emotionally for his family. He had to acknowledge not just Rachel's struggles, but his own limitations and fears as a parent. Was he, in truth, the father he aspired to be, or merely a provider? Determined to mend the growing rift, Steve crafted a plan. He needed to reach out to Rachel. It was time to let down his own defenses and approach her not just as her father-in-law, but as a collaborator in their shared family narrative. He pondered the best way to invite her to talk, wanting to bridge that gap instead of barreling through it. His thoughts were interrupted by the diner door swinging open, and in walked Linda, her face brightening at the sight of him. "Steve, I've been looking for you. You missed the pancake breakfast at church," she said, sliding into the booth across from him. "Yeah, sorry, Linda. I just needed some time to think," he replied, forcing a smile but feeling the tension tighten within his chest. She studied him, her brow furrowing. "You can't fix everything on your own, you know. You need to talk it out, whatever's bothering you." Steve felt a surge of gratitude, yet beneath it, vulnerability lurked, eager to take its due. "I'm trying to figure out how to connect with Rachel," he admitted, the weight of the admission settling over him like a quilt. "I've been so engrossed in my work and providing I didn't see what she was going through." Linda frowned. "You both need to come together, open up. It's tough for her, Steve. Why not invite her to dinner and really talk? No distractions." In that moment, inspiration struck. Instead of attempting to mask the inherent tension with a polished, perfect meal, he would create a space that embraced honesty, a simple home-cooked meal where they could break bread and share raw, unguarded thoughts. That evening, Steve meticulously planned the dinner, a type of culinary preparation he hadn't engaged in years. Spaghetti and homemade sauce, Rachel's favorite. As he stirred the bubbling pot, the kitchen filled with rich aromas. He imagined them laughing, perhaps talking about shared memories, navigating the murky waters of their current reality. Step by step, as the time drew closer, anxiety intertwined with anticipation. Would Rachel be receptive? Would she meet his honesty with her own? Would she feel stifled? Or could this be the turning point he desperately hoped for? That night, as Rachel arrived with a hesitant smile, Steve felt a spark of determination ignite within him. It was time to confront the silence that had defined their interactions, the hard truths that needed expression. "Rachel," he began, already sensing the gravity of this moment, "there's something important we need to talk about. I want to understand you, really understand." The air seemed to hold its breath, a silence pregnant with possibility and tension. As Rachel's eyes dropped to the table, what would she say in response? The moment hung there, brimming with potential. As Steve's heart raced in the space of uncertainty, would the conversation lead to healing or more pain? The truth loomed ahead of them both, and the time had come to face it. Rachel's gaze remained locked on the table, as if the wood grain held answers to the unspoken questions hanging thick in the air. Steve felt the gravity of the moment pressing against him, the silence amplifying the doubts swirling in his mind. Had he overstepped? Was his desire for connection naive, misconstrued as an intrusion? "Dad," Rachel began, her voice barely above a whisper. Suddenly, Steve was acutely aware of the distance between them. The comfortable familial bond they once shared now felt like a fragile structure, precarious and about to crumble. He clenched his fists against the table, a desperate attempt to steady himself. He couldn't allow fear to dictate the conversation. The time for self-doubt was gone. "I know things have been tense between us. I've been so focused on what I thought was important, providing, being the breadwinner, that I missed what's even more vital, being present for you." Rachel's eyes flickered upward momentarily before returning to her lap. She nodded slowly, a tentative sign that she was listening. Encouraged, Steve leaned forward, his voice warm but firm. "I want you to know I see how hard you're working, managing everything. I want you to feel comfortable sharing your struggles with me." This time, Rachel breathed in deeply, glancing at him. "I don't know if you really understand, though." "Then help me." The words came out with a force Steve hadn't anticipated, driven by an urgency that coursed through him. "Help me understand what you're going through." Her guard dropped ever so slightly, a crack in the fortress she had built. "You think because you provide we should be fine. But it's more than that, Dad. I feel alone in this. I need support, not just financial but emotional. Sometimes I think you care about us less because of how much you're focused on work." Each of her words struck like a hammer against a chisel, shaping and transforming his understanding of their relationship. The realization hit him hard. In his pursuit of success, he had unintentionally sent her the message that his career was his priority. "I never meant to make you feel that way," Steve replied, his heart clutching uncomfortably. "How can I support you better?" Rachel hesitated, the silence thick once more. I don't know. It's not entirely your fault. But there's so much pressure, especially since Nathan and I have been. Balancing everything is overwhelming, and I feel like I'm failing at it all. And it hurts when the closest family members don't see that. His chest tightened. The vulnerability she was exposing shook him to his core. Rachel's honesty was a doorway to an emotional landscape he was unprepared for. I can't promise to have the answers, Rachel, but I can promise to be here to really listen. A flicker of something hope, perhaps, crossed her features, and she nodded, initiating an exchange that felt like the first step into uncharted territory. They weren't just father and daughter anymore. They were two individuals sharing the weight of their struggles. I think I need to talk more, Rachel said after a moment. It's just tough feeling like I'm burdening you. No, Steve interjected softly. You're not a burden. You're my daughter. We can face this together. If I want to be a good father, I need to show up, not just financially but emotionally too. As their conversation deepened, exploring both their fears and aspirations, Steve felt the chains of his past perceptions begin to loosen. With each earnest exchange, Rachel revealed pieces of herself he had been oblivious to, and in return, he offered fragments of his own journey, shedding light on his own inadequacies and unfulfilled fears. By the end of the evening, an unspoken pact lingered in the air. They would strive to meet each other halfway. But as he waved Rachel goodbye, he couldn't shake the gnawing sense that this was only the beginning. He had committed to being more present, but what would that truly entail? How would he navigate the challenges ahead? Conflicted emotions filled him. Uncertainty danced alongside hope. Could this rekindling of their bond withstand the inevitable trials that life would throw their way? As he closed the door and turned back to the quiet kitchen still simmering with the remnants of their meal, he felt a new storm brewing within him, far more challenging than before, a call for personal change he would have to confront. The coming days held uncertainty, but they also promised growth. What he didn't know was just how far he would need to stretch himself to repair not only his relationship with Rachel, but also uncover the deeper truths about his own identity. And as he contemplated this, a sudden thought struck him. What if he focused on not just being a father, but also becoming a better version of himself? The question lingered, could a deeper understanding of self bring about the transformation he was yearning for, not only for himself but for his family as well? And with that query, a new resolve began to take root within him. The road ahead was uncertain, yet it felt tantalizingly alive with possibility. Steve spent the next few days wrestling with the swirling whirlpool of emotions ignited by his conversation with Rachel. He awoke each morning with a fresh determination, yet still found himself grappling with the vague anxiety that lurked beneath his resolve. What did being a present father truly involve? As he prepared for work, the stakes of his new intentions felt tangible, as if they were a palpable weight resting on his shoulders. He knew he had to create opportunities to connect, but the doubt crept back in. Were the gestures he considered enough? Would Rachel perceive his efforts as genuine, or would they seem like hollow attempts to bridge the gap he had allowed to grow? He realized that mere words wouldn't suffice. Action was required. That Thursday afternoon, Steve's phone buzzed with a message from Rachel. She had asked him to come over that evening to help with Ben, her son, a simple task that opened the door to what he hoped could be a deeper engagement. He wondered if this was the perfect chance to reinforce his commitment. He arrived early at Rachel's with a thoughtful gift, a small toy for Ben, wrapped meticulously in colorful paper. He mentally prepared for the evening, wanting everything to go smoothly. Upon entering, Steve noticed the slight chaos that surrounded Rachel's home. Toys were scattered across the floor, a testament to the lively energy of a toddler. Rachel stood near the kitchen, her expression a mixture of gratitude and apprehension as she greeted him. "Thanks for coming, Dad. I really appreciate it," she said. A hint of sincerity threaded through her words. "I know it's a lot," but her voice trailed off, a pause laden with expectation. "I'm here to help," he countered, dropping his bag by the door, his tone sounding more confident than he felt. As he knelt to play with Ben, he felt a flicker of warmth at the boy's laughter. It was a sound he found impossible to resist. But amidst the light, Steve was acutely aware of Rachel watching, observing, her eyes reflecting more than just familial affection. They were scrutinizing him, urging him not to falter. As the evening unfolded, Steve made a conscious effort to engage not only with Ben but also with Rachel. Between diaper changes and snack breaks, he carefully navigated the conversation, probing into Rachel's life as a mother, the challenges she faced, and her aspirations. He listened intently, making sure the dichotomy of his past actions, his withholding of emotional support, didn't resurface. However, what felt like a breakthrough quickly descended into a moment of tension. Just when Steve was beginning to feel like they were bonding, a sharp tone caught him off guard. "Are you actually listening to me?" Rachel snapped unexpectedly, her forehead creasing with frustration. "It feels like you're just trying to check a box. Either engage or don't." The sting of her words hit hard. It was a revelation. Steve hadn't anticipated the moments he thought were showing progress were instead amplifying Rachel's feelings of neglect. The reality of his inadequacies stung like a slap to his face. For the first time, he truly felt the impact of his absence beyond just the financial support he had provided. "I thought I was doing the right thing," he managed, his voice becoming small. Deep down, he realized he was still grappling with his own feelings of inadequacy, trying to rise above them for Rachel's sake. "Dad, I'm trying to let you in, but it feels inconsistent. One moment you want to understand and the next, you retreat into work," she said, exasperation creeping through her tone. The moment demanded a reflection of his intentions, forcing him to confront a nagging truth. He hadn't shown up for her emotionally, even though he had promised to try. That fleeting yet piercing confrontation, Steve felt the ground beneath him shift. It became clear to him that change wouldn't come merely from showing up. It required vulnerability, perhaps even exposing parts of himself he had buried deep. Torn between his instinct to retreat into the familiar world of achievement and the daunting call to embrace vulnerability, Steve recognized he faced a decision. As he left that evening, the weight of Rachel's words anchored themselves in his mind. He would need to confront those deeper truths within himself. What lay beyond his facade of a dependable father? Was he willing to embrace failure in service of connection? In the depth of that night, he faced an unfamiliar crossroads. Engaging with his daughter demanded resilience not just in the context of their past, but within the framework of who he was becoming. The question loomed in the dimness of his thoughts. How far was he willing to venture into discomfort to achieve the closeness he craved? With this self-evaluation simmering, Steve contemplated the lessons yet to come. He understood now that the road to rekindling their bond was destructively beautiful, fraught with uncertainty and promise. The coming days would require him to not just rise to the occasion, but also redefine what it meant to be a father, and to truly embrace the vulnerability that accompanied love. He began to strategize how best to bridge those emotional gaps. What were the tools he could use to not only communicate his love, but also demonstrate it beyond words? The realization sparked an ember of motivation within him. And so, as sleep quietly enveloped him, Steve recognized he was on the precipice of confronting his deepest fears, the hidden capacities for emotional strength he had overlooked for years. In this journey of learning to be present, he was poised to discover not just what it meant to be a father, but also to uncover more about himself than he ever thought possible. Yet again, the question reverberated within him like a rhythmic pulse. What sacrifices would he need to make to pave the way for this drawn-out discovery? The unfolding path hinted at revelation, but was he prepared for its potential backlash? The morning sun cut through the blinds, casting striped shadows across Steve's bedroom. He awoke feeling different, charged with a sense of purpose that felt foreign and invigorating. The remnants of Rachel's words echoed in his mind, strong enough to pierce through the haze of his usual routine. "Am I just checking a box?" He squeezed his eyes shut, willing the self-doubt to drown in the light of determination. Today was going to be different. He decided to take a brief moment for reflection, a practice he had never embraced before. Sitting on the edge of the bed, he stretched out his palms as if cradling the uncertainties he faced. What elements of his past contributed to his emotional distance? The weight of those thoughts settled like an anchor, but he had no intentions of letting it drag him down. Instead, he sought clarity. Throughout the day, Steve made small yet significant changes. At work, he left the office early, making a point to step away from the mounting pressures and prioritize his intention to reorganize his life. As the clock struck 5, he packed his bag, reminding himself what he was really investing in: the connection with Rachel and Ben. When he reached Rachel's house, he found her and Ben in the backyard. The laughter of the boy rang out like music, a melody he had allowed to fade in and out of his life. But as he approached, that laughter faded into a hush. Rachel looked up, her eyes narrowing for a moment, then softening as she saw him. "Hey," he greeted, forcing a lightness into his tone, though the weight of his journey still hovered within him. "Hi, Dad," she replied, her tone revealing a mix of surprise and uncertainty. "Want to help me with some gardening? It's a little chaotic back here." Steve hesitated. Gardening required dirt and patience, a stark contrast to his usual measure of productivity. Yet wasn't he that the point? To embrace the messiness of life, to flex those emotional muscles he'd been neglecting? He nodded, not fully convinced but willing to take the plunge into this new territory. As they worked together, Steve carefully followed Rachel's lead, digging, planting and laughing as Ben attempted to help by pulling weeds from the wrong patch. For the first time, Steve felt a growing sense of camaraderie, a connection forming that wasn't solely based on his failures or attempts at recompense. Their shared laughter echoed into the afternoon, bringing brief moments of clarity and warmth that spoke of reconnection. "Dad, thanks for coming to help," Rachel said, pausing to brush her brow as the sun dipped toward the horizon. The sincerity in her eyes set something stirring deep within him, not just gratitude, but something stronger, hope. "Rachel, I know I've been uncertain," he allowed, setting the gardening tools aside. "I'm learning to actually be here, not just physically but emotionally." The admission hung between them, raw and unfurnished. She didn't speak immediately, her expression guarded yet contemplative. It was a challenging moment. Revealing vulnerability to someone who had every right to be apprehensive about him felt like a tightrope act. "I hope I can trust you this time," she finally replied. Her voice steady though a shadow of skepticism remained. "I want to earn that trust," he responded, his resolve deepening. "I want to be more than just your dad in the background. I want to connect. I realize now I've missed so much of what's important." Rachel's lips tightened for a brief moment, and Steve watched the shift in her expression. Beneath their prickly past lay a fissure of softening resolve, an acknowledgement that there was potential for reparations between them. As the sky streaked pink and orange, Steve felt an emotional shift, a change akin to the gardens they tended, both requiring effort, patience, and nurturing. This moment felt like a fragile seedling taking root, one he couldn't afford to neglect. Yet, in the aftermath of their tentative understanding, a flicker of dread crept back in. What if he failed again? What if his past habits of isolation and detachment returned with a force that dimmed this budding connection? Steve's heart raced, not because of fear of failure, but anxiety at that unknown territory awaiting him. Determined to prevent backsliding, he mentally mapped out tangible steps to sustain the connection. He would need to be expansive, diving deeper into emotional uncertainties, possibly inviting Rachel and Ben into shared experiences, excursions, crafts, conversations. While reflecting on what lay ahead, he felt a surge of resolve fuse with apprehension. And in that dynamic tension, the embers of possibility burned bright, shaping Steve's new journey as a father, one that demanded authenticity over pretense. Yet, as the sun dipped below the horizon, an unsettling notion struck him: was he truly prepared for the lengths he needed to go to solidify this bond? In the depths of uncertainty, one question loomed larger than ever. What revelations awaited him in these uncharted waters of emotional connection? The following day dawned with an urgency Steve hadn't felt before. Fueled by a mix of fear and determination, he found himself fixated on the notion of connection. What did it really mean to bridge the emotional chasm that had yawned wider during the years he'd buried himself in work? After a restless night mulling over this question, he resolved to take proactive steps. In the morning, he researched local activities that families could enjoy together. The idea was simple yet daunting: a day trip to the nearby lake, where they could fish, hike, or simply revel in each other's presence. The tranquility of nature could be a perfect backdrop for rebuilding the familial bond. But at the same time, uncertainty nagged at him. Would Rachel and Ben be open to spending that time with him, or would his intentions clash with their cautious approach to him? Around midday, he mustered the courage to text Rachel about the idea. The message bounced around in his mind before translating into words. "Hey, how about a day at the lake? Just us. I think it could be fun." Sending it felt like a leap off a cliff, and he exhaled sharply as he hit send. For a moment he felt nauseous, the air thick with potential rejection. An hour crept by, and just as he was about to resign himself to silence, his phone chirped. It was Rachel. Sounds good. When? Relief washed over him, though it was quickly supplanted by the anxiety of preparing. He spent the next few hours gathering supplies, snacks, fishing gear, and sunscreen. Each item felt like a tangible gesture of intent, an offering of a fresh start. Once at Rachel's house, he burst in with enthusiasm, although he fought to maintain a facade of calmness. Ready for an adventure? He enthused, trying to match the excitement Rachel held in her gaze. The car ride to the lake was punctuated by awkward laughter and lulls of silence, as Steve took the opportunity to observe Rachel interacting with Ben. She was patient with him, offering direction and encouragement as he animatedly recounted the story of how he learned how to fish. A part of Steve swelled with pride, a sense of family that had felt out of reach for so long. It was all becoming possible. But with each small victory came the persistent whisper of doubt. Was he fitting in or merely an intruder to a bond already flourishing? Arrival at the lake brought the first hint of comfort. The water shimmered under the sun, casting a kaleidoscope of colors across its surface. They set up their spot with familiar ease, a team constructing moments of connection. Do you think I can catch a fish? Ben asked, looking up at his father with unfiltered hope. It was like a mirror reflecting back the innocent Steve had neglected to nurture in his own life. Absolutely. You just have to be patient, Steve replied, squatting to match Ben's level. He felt the warmth of something almost foreign, a connection that seemed to ignite potential transformation. As the afternoon trekked on, laughter erupted into the air, each chuckle nudging the walls around Steve's heart a little lower. However, caution lingered. He allowed himself only partial revelry, aware that he was one misstep away from snapping back to reality. What if a moment turned sour? What if one ill-placed word sent them retreating back into self-protective silence? Eventually, Ben pitched his line out into the lake, and a quiet settled around them, punctured only by the distant ripples. Steve saw Rachel gazing into her phone, occasionally probably distracted by messages or social media, but he chose not to make an issue of it. Growth wasn't about forcing connection. It was about nurturing it until it bloomed naturally. Yet, the moment came when the stillness was broken not by excitement, but by a silence too thick for comfort. After a short while, Rachel, still focused on her phone, muttered under her breath, "You never really learned, did you?" The seemingly innocuous words struck him like a slap, carrying an undercurrent of frustration and sarcasm. "Rachel," Steve ventured, confusion dripping into his voice. She was still glued to the screen, unaware of the tension she had just ignited. She finally looked up, her brow furrowed in annoyance. "You say you want to connect, but you can't even put your phone down for one day." He inhaled sharply, her words reverberating in his chest. This was a pivotal moment, one he was neither fully prepared for nor capable of deflecting. It dawned on him then. Sometimes a moment of confrontation could offer the sharpest clarity on the path forward. Would he cling to the familiar edges of defensiveness or respond with vulnerability, breaking down the remaining barriers before him? Caught between two opposing forces, fear of failure and hope for repair, Steve realized this wasn't merely about enjoying a day at the lake. It was about dismantling the lingering notions of inadequacy, one challenging conversation at a time. But more than that, a new question echoed within him. Was he ready to confront the deeper issues entwined in their relationship? The answers awaited, hidden beneath the surface like the fish waiting to be caught in the lake. As the shimmering sunlight danced on the water, Steve faced not just Rachel's words, but the reflection of his own willingness to change or to retreat once more. What would he choose in this critical moment of truth? The tension hung in the air, thick enough that Steve could almost taste it. Rachel's words had cut deeper than he anticipated. He could feel the weight of the conversation pressing down upon him, amplifying the insecurity that lurked just beneath the surface. How had it come to this? He had united all his courage to suggest a day of reconnection, only for Rachel to launch an unexpected strike. In that moment, Steve was not merely a father attempting to reconnect. He was a man faced with his own shortcomings, the glaring absence of the kind of involvement he had promised himself to embody, all laid bare in front of Rachel and Ben. I didn't mean to," he stammered, searching for the right words, all but lost in the swirl of emotions. "It's not that I can't put it down. I just wanted today to be special." The words spilled out in a desperate attempt to reconcile her disappointment with his intentions. Rachel looked at him, her expression a mix of frustration and something softer, as if she understood but felt justified in her anger. Should be, Steve. But it starts with you being present. A part of this family, she replied, her tone moderated now but still edged with the remnants of annoyance. Steve's heart sank. It was less about the phone, more about years of absence, years of failing to invest into the lives of those who mattered most. How had he let it slip so far? The silence that followed felt heavy, the kind that wrapped around them like a lead blanket. He was painfully aware of what happened. He had hoped to bring joy and connection with a simple outing, but had inadvertently opened a wound. He had exposed a fracture within their family dynamic that had likely begun long before this moment. Maybe you're right, Steve finally said, his voice low. I need to do more. To step up. I just don't always know how. Each word was a small act of vulnerability, a crack in the armor he had worn for so long. Rachel seemed to soften further. It's not just about today. It's about a constant effort, she replied, moving her gaze toward Ben, who had been observing their interaction, eyes wide with intrigue and confusion. He needs you to be there for him, not just physically but emotionally. He's at an age where he needs his father. Her voice softened to be his dad. With a surge of remorse flooding through him, Steve swallowed hard. Did he understand what it meant to be his father? Had he ever truly grasped what that role entailed beyond the provision of food and shelter? A surge of determination rippled within him. He had spent too long hiding behind his desk or retreating to the comfort of his work. It was time to reshape his narrative, to redefine his role, not just as someone's father, but as someone actively present and engaged. All right, let us make it more than just today then, he suggested, his voice gaining strength. Let us make this a regular thing. Family hikes, fishing, whatever Ben wants. Rachel nodded cautiously, but Steve could see that she was still registering the change. There was a flicker of hope in her eyes, a sign that maybe this time was different. As they reclaimed the moment, he joined Ben, teaching him to cast his line into the water. Their serenity shifted into shared laughter, where Steve felt a tentative warmth spreading through him, reminding him of the joy he had missed. For the first time in a long while, he wasn't just casting lines into the water. He was planting seeds for future connection within his own family. Yet, as the sun dipped lower in the sky, warnings flickered within him. Could he keep it up? Could he sustain this newfound awareness as the days turned into weeks? The foundation felt shaky, and the fear that he might slip back into old habits loomed large. Just then, Ben tugged his arm, pulling him from his thoughts. Dad! Look, I think I caught something. The boy's excitement cut through Steve's worries, but as he turned, the reflection of unyielding commitment echoed in Rachel's eyes. This was just the beginning, both exhilarating and daunting. Would he truly stay anchored to this moment, or would the tide of his past pull him away once more? The weight of his realization settled back over him, the stakes higher than ever. The landscape of his relationships was unfolding, full of potential, but fraught with uncertainty. As he leaned forward, wanting to share in Ben's excitement, Steve understood that the hard work lay ahead. How would he navigate this new role? What decisions would test his resolve to be present? The answers waited just beyond the horizon, much like the sun dipping below the lake's edge, promising both challenge and inviting potential. Steve walked home that evening with a blend of euphoria and anxiety. The laughter shared by the lake still rang in his ears, each chuckle from Ben a reminder of moments long overlooked. Yet beneath this buoyant surface lay the gnawing doubt of whether he had truly initiated a transformation, or merely scraped the outer layers of his issues. As he stepped into the warm glow of the kitchen, he was met by Rachel, who was rinsing dishes in the sink. She turned to him, flickers of earlier tension still dancing in her eyes. Steve could sense both a challenge and a cautious hope simmering beneath the surface. So what's next? She asked, her voice steady yet inquisitive. The question spiraled in his mind, demanding clarity he wasn't sure he possessed. I thought we could talk about family time more regularly, Steve managed to reply, his voice wavering between certainty and trepidation. He wiped his sweaty palms on his jeans, anxious that his commitment might falter under the expectations he had set. Rachel nodded but didn't say anything. The silence felt heavy again, reminding him of how often they might not have genuinely communicated before. I understand if you're hesitant, he continued, but we can't go back to how things were. A brief flicker of understanding passed between them, yet Steve felt it necessary to dive deeper. "What did you think of our day?" he ventured, seeking her candid opinion in this newfound openness. "It was good," she said cautiously, folding a dishcloth in half, then half again, perhaps giving her own thoughts the same care. "But it felt like it was just a step. I need to see action over words." A swell of frustration threatened to surface, but he pushed it down. Rachel's expectations were not unreasonable. They were a challenge to rise above the mediocrity he had grown accustomed to. It was time to address more than surface-level changes. "I know I've let you and Ben down in the past. I want to change that," he confessed, the vulnerability stinging but necessary. The kitchen grew quieter. Rachel appeared to reconsider their conversation, her hands moving deftly, mechanically through mundane tasks, but her mind was clearly processing a lot more. "Steve, it's not just about spending time together. It's about the quality of that time. How many times have I had to remind you I need your support, not just your presence?" Her words fell like stones into the pond of their relationship, sending his thoughts spiraling. Each point Rachel made settled heavy in his chest. He had often seen support as simply being physically available, but now it felt like a weary awakening. Could he truly switch that mental gear? He nodded, though deep down fear gripped him. "You're right. I need to learn what that means," he admitted, questioning what supporting Rachel truly involved beyond being there. That evening morphed into something he hadn't anticipated. They talked not just of plans but of expectations, their hopes for Ben, fears about the future, and dreams they had set aside. As they communicated, realizations dawned. Steve recognized that they were both learning to navigate this new terrain where their family could flourish, but a lingering whisper echoed in his mind. What would happen when the thrill of this realization faded into daily life? He imagined the days ahead, juggling work, the lingering pull of old habits, and the emotional labor of maintaining open dialogue. After tucking Ben into bed, Steve returned to the living room where Rachel sat, scrolling through her phone. "Do you think we can keep this up?" he asked, the vulnerability of the question splayed open between them like a half-finished puzzle. "I hope so," she said, the slightest hint of uncertainty laced in her voice. "Just remember, it's a daily choice. Days would transform into weeks. The commitment needed endurance, a commitment forged by consistent effort." As he turned off the lights that night, a question surfaced within him that he hadn't fully confronted. How could he ensure that he truly stayed present in Ben's life? The tightrope of reforming every aspect of his professional and personal involvement loomed ahead, a precarious balancing act between work's demands and family's needs. Tomorrow he would face his work colleagues anew, and perhaps the most difficult challenge awaited: drawing the line that distinguished his responsibilities with his aspiration to be the father he always dreamed of being. The facade of stability felt fragile, and as he lay in the dark contemplating his next steps, the weight of uncertainty settled heavily on his chest. Would he falter under pressure, or find the resolve to engrave this new path into his life? Steve awoke the next morning with a knot of anticipation coiled in his stomach. The sun streamed through the slats of the blinds, illuminating the room like a spotlight on a stage where he would soon play a much-needed role. Today was not just about work. It was about ensuring he could step into the father he aspired to be. After a quick breakfast, he kissed Ben on the forehead, absorbing the joy radiating from his son's smile. Each giggle reminded him of the stakes, love intertwining with responsibility. He could almost hear Rachel's voice in his head, urging him to be present. As he drove to work, the weight of her expectations melded with his intent. This was not about half measures. This was his chance to forge deeper connections. Arriving at the office, Steve instantly sensed the tension permeating the air. Colleagues buzzed with a mix of energy and anxiety, a palpable tension rising as they anticipated their upcoming project review. Once routine, these meetings had shifted under the weight of significant new directives. His boss's voice echoed in his thoughts. "We need accountability and results." For once, Steve welcomed the pressure. He could channel it positively. During the gathering, the team went around the room discussing their updates. Each presentation projected the raw realities of their work, and he felt his own struggles creeping back into focus. All around him, it seemed as if others possessed an ease. He lacked a confidence that propelled their words forward like arrows to the target of success. When it was his turn, Steve stood up, inhaled sharply and spoke, each word straining against a veil of uncertainty. As he presented his ideas, he observed nods and furrowed brows. In a moment of strategic clarity, he realized he could reframe his thoughts not just as obstacles, but as opportunities for collaboration and trust, the fundamental building blocks he'd been overlooking. "We need to share our challenges and support each other," he declared, feeling a spark of clarity ignite within him. After the meeting, his colleague Tom swept him aside. "You're feeling different today, Steve. More engaged," he said, brow raised. "What's going on?" Awkwardly, Steve hesitated, the truth scratching at his throat. He could either share his struggles in fleeting honesty or keep playing it safe. Choosing the former, he revealed his desire to connect, both at home and work, saying, "I've realized that being present means more than just showing up. It means being all in." Tom's affirmation felt like a small victory, the ripple of accountability spreading outward. Yet deep down, the unease resurfaced, a contemplation of how his commitment would withstand the pressures of the job. Would he keep this newfound mindset intact amid deadlines and distractions? The day unfolded in familiar patterns, sporadic bursts of productivity interspersed with a familiar anxiety that buzzed like static electricity. Meetings and emails flowed like water, each hybrid moment a reminder of his dual roles. It was during a particularly grueling team meeting when his phone vibrated with a text from Rachel. "Can we talk later?" As the day wound down, the simple message struck him with a sense of foreboding. What would this conversation entail? Would he falter in his progress, or would he move forward unencumbered? Steve drove home, the weight of the day colliding with the worries that loomed. What transformed from mere anxiety into a relentless storm of self-doubt? Was he prepared for another confrontation? Would Rachel push him to examine his motives and progress again? Despite the chaos within, he steeled himself with an unwavering determination. He had to embrace the conversation. Committing to his transformation meant confronting discomfort and learning from it. Tonight would be about more than a family talk. It would be a litmus test for his resolve. As he pulled into the driveway, uncertainty sang in chords beneath the surface of his composure. Would he have the strength to pedal through the complexities of growth, or would he find himself tangled in the familiar weeds of avoidance? The moment of truth approached, both at home and within himself. Steve entered the house, the familiar scent of home wrapping around him like a comforting embrace. But tonight felt different, charged, like the air before a storm. He found Rachel seated at the dining table, her fingers drumming nervously against the wood. Her expression betrayed a mix of trepidation and hope. "Thanks for coming over to talk," she said, her voice softer than usual. He nodded, feeling the weight of unspoken words hanging in the air between them. "Let us hear it," he encouraged, setting his bag down and taking a seat across from her. The anticipation settled heavily in the pit of his stomach, but he had to face this. He had opened the door to their communication and now had to step through it. "I wanted to share how things are with me and Ben," she started, her voice steadying as she spoke. "I appreciate that you've made an effort to be here lately, but sometimes I feel we're still not fully understanding each other as struggles." Steve nodded, recognizing the truth in her words. "I understand. I want to listen more, but I also want to show I can do more than just being around." His heart raced, knowing that every word mattered. "What can I do to support you and Ben better?" Rachel took a deep breath, her gaze fixed on his. "Being here is a start, but I need to know that you're part of our everyday lives, not just when it's convenient for you. Sometimes I feel like you're still holding back, still prioritizing your work over our interactions." Her words struck harder than he anticipated, a vivid reminder of how far he still had to go. "I see that now," Steve replied, his voice thick with sincerity. "I've been so fixated on trying to provide that I've lost sight of the emotional aspect of being a father. I've missed too many moments." Rachel nodded, a flicker of understanding illuminating her features. "It's not just about being present in the house. It's about being emotionally available. We need that connection. Ben needs to see that." Steve felt a rush of conviction build within him. "I can commit to making that change," he asserted, determination spurring him forward. "I want to be involved in Ben's life. Not just when it's easy, but every day. I plan to show him that he matters beyond just being a responsibility. I won't retreat into work anymore when things get tough." Rachel's relief was palpable, but a note of caution still lingered in her eyes. It has to be consistent, Steve. I need to see you truly committing to it to us. That means more than just words, he acknowledged, courage rising within him. So let us make a plan. I want to have weekly family nights, share activities we can do together. I want to create memories instead of just filling time. She leaned back, studying him for a moment that felt stretched with possibility. I'd like that. Feeling the spark of connection rekindle, the conversation shifted. They began mapping out ideas for family outings and activities, simple hikes, crafting days, even just a movie night. The warmth in their dialogue became a harbinger of renewed understanding, each shared idea drawing them closer, intertwining their hopes and aspirations. As they spoke, Steve recognized that he was shedding old fears and insecurities. This wasn't just about him asking for forgiveness. It was about establishing a new foundation based on honesty, commitment, and care. By the end of their talk, a sense of fulfillment washed over him. They had surfaced their vulnerabilities, exchanged meaningful insights, and reinforced the bonds between them. The past no longer cast a long shadow over their relationship. It now served as a stepping stone toward mutual support and collaboration. As Rachel bid him good night, a genuine smile danced across her face. I really appreciate this, Steve. Feels good to talk openly. As he stepped outside, Steve felt exhilarated. This transformation wasn't merely about becoming a better father, it was about reclaiming his identity. He had risen above his previous self, laid bare insecurities to forge a new path of intent. Tomorrow he planned to carry this newfound commitment into every interaction, both at work and at home. No more hiding behind the constraints of a job. He would embrace the challenge of showing up with authenticity and emotional depth. As he closed the door behind him, he realized for the first time that growth wasn't just an option. It was an imperative. He had conquered the fears that harbored doubt, replaced by a desire to flourish within the roles of father, husband, and individual. With unwavering resolution, he stepped into the future with solid confidence, resolute in his determination to be the father his family deserved, fully engaged and indisputably present. Now more than ever he understood. It was time to embrace life's challenges with vigor, proving to himself and to Rachel that his journey wouldn't just end here. This was merely the beginning of a new legacy of connection within their family. Steve made a silent vow as he prepared for bed that night, looking forward to every small moment they would share moving forward. It was his time to embrace the vulnerability inherent in love, not as a weakness, but as the pivotal source of strength that would define their future. Don't wait another moment. Subscribe immediately to the channel for more exclusive emotional stories that reveal personal transformations like this one. Leave a like now to fuel the algorithm that brings powerful narratives to those who need inspiration. Comment your reactions and theories about tonight's ending. We can't wait to hear what you think. And share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who, just like Steve, need to see the journey of overcoming life's deepest challenges. This is the moment to show your support.